Welcome back to the inside of my head. Today we will be continuing on a couple things from last week, and then we will also be bringing in a couple more topics to discuss. So, again, last week we talked a lot about the numbing effect, and we also talked a lot about opportunity and things that come around with that. And I think we also brought up a couple other things. But I just wanted to go into more of the opportunity connection side of it. And something I've been thinking about recently is a lot of the times we are scared to share stuff that we like because we are scared that other people, whether that is people we are close with, people that we aren't, you don't see that they will think the same about the certain thing that you enjoy. So for me, I know I experience this a lot probably in school a lot and even past then with sharing things with them, even though I'm like big on it. I don't necessarily know if they are, and I don't want them, you think sometimes they'll think different about you once you share that with them. And I experienced with this, of course, like I said before. I am big in sports, as you know, and I'm also big in sports cards. And something I don't share with many people. I don't go up to people, and that's not one of the first things I share. Is like, oh yeah, I'm big into sports cards. I collect a lot. I do a lot of stuff in that area. That is not something I usually share. And I think it took me a couple years to even talk about it. It's been something that I've done well in. It's been something that I've really enjoyed, but I didn't really talk to other people around me about that because, frankly, I was like, oh, there's no way they have any type of interest in this topic. But once I did, I think I shared it with a couple, but it's not like I went out and shared it with everyone. But I started to share it with people, and I was surprised the amount of people that did know about it or that were interested in it because either that I was interested in it or they had experience in it before. And they're like, oh, yeah, I have some, trading cards as well. And that really surprised me. And it kind of comes back to the point with the opportunities point where sometimes I said that we're, I don't know, maybe timid to take opportunities or share what we know. We talked a lot about sharing the knowledge and how that really creates a system where everyone is learning and growing. And I've thought about that, and was thinking about it on the points of sharing those things that you like, but you don't know if others will. Along the part where I said I was sharing that I was in more of a sports card area as well as the other things I was doing. And once I did that, and I was surprised about how many people really understood that. Even with when I started YouTube a little, I didn't tell many people. But then I told people about the challenge I did, the results, and stuff like that. And I was surprised at how many people were really interested in that topic. And even if they weren't really interested in that topic, they're still interested in what you're doing. And that's something that I'd really like to share with you today is just the fact that if you're not, those connections with other people are important, and sharing those things that you're doing won't ever really be a bad thing for you in the long term. Yes, there's always the thought that, oh, all these people are going to make fun of me because it might be something a little out of the ordinary to the normal world, even though it's probably not that out of the ordinary. And you just got to know coming in if it's something you like enough. Like I said, the sports cards, I'm probably never going to get out of that area. That's probably something I'm never going to be like, hey, I'm not in the sports cards anymore. I don't see that happening. And if it's something like that that you really like, what's the problem with sharing? You never know if the other person next to you is thinking the same thing about how they don't want to share that same thing with you. And even if not, most people respect what you do. They respect the things you like. Uh, Even if they don't necessarily like the same things, most people are able to respect the same things that you like. If they don't, it's too bad for them. There's nothing you can really do about that. But if you can make those connections, it can prove to be beneficial in the end. Like I said, with my YouTube stuff, I told a few people, and they put in their interest in it, and I'm like, hey, now I can use these people To either help them create a channel, they can help me with mine. I can also We can just help each other, and if they start doing theirs, they can give me tips and pointers of things that they found that have worked well. Just like I came in and provided value. It's again, this is it also applies to the business structure with this sharing things. It's a big in business. It's big to provide value, and once you provide value, it's especially when you're sharing stuff for free. Once you provide value to that person, it's most of the time they will come back to you and ask for more value. But another thing that they'll be willing to do is they'll say, "Hey, you provided me this value. Let me share for free or whatever." And they'll think, "Hey, let me share the value that I have to you." You see this a lot in opt-in forums, or you can say, "I'm like, well, here, I'll just explain like this. When you go to, let's say you see like I don't know, an ad or even just a website that's like says like top 10 movies to watch or whatever. And once you go to that page, it will say, hey, sign in, or not sign in, but sign up or whatever. And it'll just ask you for your name and your email address to view this form. This is a opt-in. And what this means is you're exchanging some value for their email address. And businesses do this because how important an email list is to a business success. Because once you gain those leads and those people to your list, you can then send out emails and such forth to them to make them want to go down the value ladder, and to start at something small like an opt-in. He's like, hey, I'm just providing you value. And once they see the value in that product, they're more likely to say, hey, they gave me a lot of value for free. I wonder how much I would get if I paid. And you will eventually move them up to the higher tiers within your business, just through providing them with really good value every step along the way. I see this kind of the same within friendships, or even just people is if you're providing them with value, they'll most likely come back to you with either their own value, or they'll even come back to you and they'll just learn from you. And and it's always good to be creating those connections with others. And once you provide value to those others, you will also be able to strengthen those connections with others, because everyone has an innate trait to learn. Even if they say, "Oh, I don't like to learn," I don't think they really say that. It's more of like, "Oh, I don't like school," but they never really say they don't like to learn, because everyone has stuff that they like to learn about. And if you can share snippets with them or things with them that they can also learn from, it's very beneficial to the relationship to have those ideas shared in between. Another thing that I would say is that just don't be scared. It could result in you being made fun of, but I think that's more beneficial in the long run, because in most industries, or most people that have really good ideas and share those with the world, the beginning they think they're dumb. The first person that probably was like, "Hey, a light bulb would be a really good idea." Others were like, huh, "You're not very smart. How are you going to get it to light up without a fire?" And just all these ideas that start out, and people are like, "Hey, what are you doing?" But if you can continue to share the value with them of what you're doing, they'll be able to more understand what you're doing. And a lot of time when they are, if they do make fun of you, it's more of, I would say, jealousy that they're not having the same success that you are in that spot. And that's caused because, if you see someone that's really successful, most people, especially people that don't like to put in work, will ask themselves and will be like, hey, that person shouldn't be there. Why am I not there? How are they any better than me? Instead of wanting the value from that person. And I see that's the big disconnection there, is instead of when you look at someone that's more successful, you should want to know the value that they have and the value that they bring, and more of, instead of like, why them instead of me, it should be what steps did they take to get into this position instead of, oh, yeah, what are they doing? They're not as good as me in this position. When they probably have even better, they know what they're doing if they've gotten to that spot. And that is something that's very beneficial to both sides. Also, something I wanted to cover in this is how basically I learned to learn or to study. In because this is very important because for me for a while it was like, oh yeah, I get good grades, I do all this stuff well, and I was never at a point where I struggled really hard in a class. So for me, when I saw other people struggled, I was like, "What are you doing? It's not hard." I never had a good perspective starting out of others in the classroom because I was like, even in not outside of the classroom, I was like, "How do you not understand this?" You know, uh, I I don't know. I never had a good perspective there until I had AP Biology. If you don't know what that means, it's an advanced placement biology class. Basically, it's a class that you study all year long for a final test, and that final test will, granted on the score you get, depends on the college credit you get from that class. I took many of these classes throughout high school or whatever, and in this class, that is where I learned how to study and learned how to really be intent in learning something, because it was the first class I ever remember having any type of struggle in. Up to then, I'd been 4.0 student and all that, but this is a class that really hit me hard in the spot that I'm like, I really don't understand this. First test, probably bombed it, probably got a D on it. And at that point, and a couple other assignments I didn't do as well as I wanted to on, I got to the point that I was like, I really need to figure this out. I don't want to be failing a class, especially one that there's a test at the end of the year of that I need to understand the information. So I got to the point I really needed to know how to really learn from this. And so basically, the best way to do this for me in this situation was to assess the what was stopping me from learning. One thing that I did, which I guess I recommend, even though it was a little strange, and it is something I got quite a few questions from in the class, is it was one of those classes that that everyone likes. It's just sit wherever. But when I was looking back at my learning situation, there was times during the class or whatever that I wouldn't necessarily been paying the most attention because I was sitting next to people that I like to talk to, or at least I did. Maybe it's because it wasn't my favorite thing to learn, and it was something that I was like, I'll figure it out eventually. But then it got to the point where I was like, probably need to separate myself from these people. So I got to the point where I actually just I sat at a table by myself, uh, kind of near just behind them or whatever, and they questioned me about it. I was like, oh, I'm just moving. It really wasn't much to that. I just said I was moving, and after that, that was a big game changer because then I've really got to the point where I was like, I really need to figure this out. And once you get desperate, you start to even if something is not let's say entertaining or something that is not necessarily fun to learn, once you know that this is something I need to do, that your mind and your brain will figure it out. And once I figured out that that was something I needed to learn and needed to do, I gained a new sense of focus. My goal going into that class was to learn as much as I could. To begin with in the class, it was not much note taking, not any of that, and I really went in depth. I That was the class I think I've tried the hardest in ever, because every single class period for probably a semester and a half, I went in there just saying I need to learn as much as I can. because if I don't, I will probably be more on the disappointed side of myself once it gets to that final test. And I think that's the class that really taught me what it took to learn something in depth. Um, I really went hard at it. I would go home. I would look up even more about the subjects that were at hand. I would really dive deep into it. I would re-go through notes. I would redo everything else. And like I said, it was the only class I was really struggling in. So all the others were still kind of coming more easily. So those were ones I didn't have to put as much focus into as this class, and I really put focus into it. And I'd say in the end, it wasn't perfect in the way that I still struggled in the class, to the fact that I wasn't getting an A every quarter, every semester or whatever. But I did get to the point where when it came to that final test, I knew enough to pass it. And that is something that taught me a big lesson about really wanting something. And once you really want something, you'll be able to find those opportunities to learn that. Like I said, I sat alone in the classroom. I took an immense amount of notes. I think I went through at least one notebook, and I really tried hard to do that. And even though it wasn't perfect, I still got the result, and I still learned the lesson that I was supposed to. Because from that point forward, school became and learning became so much easier. And the fact that I learned that once I struggled with something, I learned how to combat that. I need to kind of more on the lines, even if you can't go to a spot where you're on your own. I got to a spot where I just didn't care what others were talking about me, because my will to learn was so much bigger, so much stronger than my urge to talk to someone else. And it got to the point where it really benefited me in most fashions of life. Another thing that I would do in school that there's a lot of times where I wasn't paying the most attention, because I was like, oh, I already know this stuff, and it'll probably be easy to learn later, which in some cases it was. But after that class, it really taught me where my focus needed to be, and that is more on the subject than what's going on in my own life, or what what game is popping off right now. And I got to the point where I really learned how to take focus on that, and that has propelled me to be able to learn better in all situations, whether it's work, whether it's just something I'm interested in. And it's really gotten me to the point where I think I'm a pretty proficient learner. And yeah, that is just, and it carried throughout everything else I've done. And I think it's really important that we learn a driving force. My driving force was, hey, I really don't want to fail this, and I also don't want. I didn't want there to be a subject that beat me in a way that I couldn't beat, in a way that I couldn't succeed in the class. And if I kept up what I was doing at the beginning, that might have been true, that it would be in me. But once I got to that driving factor of, hey, this is something I want to do, and once we get that driving factor, it's amazing what lengths we'll take to complete it, and also what good that can do for us. And it's always good to go through struggle, because once you go through that struggle, there's so much you learn from that. And when you learn from that, it is incredible, because every facet of your life will be better. It really will. You'll be able to know so much more. You'll be able to uh, everything will just be better because of that struggle. And that's something that I hope you guys can learn from, is that if you are going through a struggle, or if you are in a point where you don't feel like you can do it, there's always a way that you can improve the situation. Or even if you can't, there's always something with your mind or something like that that you can do to lessen the stress of the situation, or even just make sure you're learning from it. If you're going through a really bad time, I would say to keep a journal, or even just talk on a podcast like this, or to record some of your thoughts, just so you can look back after and see the growth. That's something I really have wanted to do on this podcast, is to just see my growth as I weekly or whatever, and just share with you guys what I've been learning, and hopefully I can help you out with whatever you're going through, or just help you learn a little bit more. And hopefully, you guys can send me stuff that I can also talk about. And it's really all about learning more and the progression. And progression is key. And as we progress to become better people, and a better learner, better whatever you want to be, it is very important, I think, to record the journey, so then you can take what you've learned and share it with others, so that they can also share with you things that they've learned, and altogether it will be for your benefit. Anyway, that's just kind of what's on my mind. I will see you guys next week inside of my mind.